Temp check. What kind of summer are we having this year? A family road trip summer? A beach bum summer? Or a wake me up when the sun sets summer? With Instacart, choose your own adventure and skip the shopping side quests. Where available, you can get ice cream delivered to your hotel, sunscreen to the pool, or cold brew to your bed. Well, door, in as fast as 30 minutes. Wherever you find yourself this summer, you can get the goods. Download Instacart for free delivery on your first 3 orders. Offer valid for a limited time. Minimum $10 per order. Excludes restaurants. Additional terms and fees apply.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room? It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th.
We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
And welcome back to Scarred for Life, the podcast where we open up old wounds by looking back at the films that scared us as kids. I'm Terry.
And I'm Mary Beth.
And each episode, our special guest brings with them a movie that traumatized them as a child.
This week, our guest is writer, director, and visual effects artist Nicholas Ashe Bateman. He is the mind behind the upcoming sci-fi fantasy epic The Wanting Mare, which is his feature film debut. Terry and I were lucky to see this at Chattanooga Film Fest last year, so we're excited to talk to him.
Oh, yeah, we are.
Welcome to the show, Nicholas.
Thank you so much. Wow, what a wonderful introduction. Thank you, guys.
If you can't tell, we're obsessed with you. So.
Well, good. I've been scouring all your reviews, so it's a mutual love.
So just to start off, The Wanting Mare isn't necessarily horror, but like, how did you get into genre film?
Yes, definitely not horror. Also, the question of genre related to The Wanting Mare is this thing that is just constantly terrifying me because I'm terrified I'm gonna missell the movie to people because it's a strange duck, definitely to qualify or quantify rather.
So, okay, before you answer how to get into horror, then I have a question. Then, what do you consider the genre for The Wanting Mare?
Oh, I think I consider it a fantasy. I think that's probably my. I don't know if that's accurate though. That's just what I prefer to consider it.
I'm sorry, I called it a sci-fi fantasy at the beginning. I'm sorry.
Oh no, that's quite all right. No. I mean, it's more so. It's I think a kind of an interesting problem because the different versions of it and whatever genre qualification it has is probably indicative of me, loving a bunch of these different genres and trying to find some through line between them. And I'm a huge fantasy fan, and I guess like everyone else, I saw The Lord of the Rings when I was a kid, and it just had such a huge effect on me, unlike anything else. And I was the perfect. I'm 31, so I was I was in 6th grade at the time, so it was like sort of perfect. And I remember the whole day. Like I remember what I ate before I saw it. I remember like what we did, when I came home. And I keep saying this to people, but it's funny to think about that I saw it and didn't really think about it like it was a movie. I even though I obviously was like very aware it was a film, but I really was upset that I couldn't be there. So that that was like, and that feeling is so strong. And I think, even though it's funny and it's sweet and nostalgic, it's also whatever that desire is has certainly aged with me in a way that is trying to figure out, everything that's strange about the movie is me trying to accommodate that feeling growing up, and trying to make a movie that seems to, I'm trying to have my cake and eat it too. I keep saying, like, I'm trying to make a movie that applies to me, but I'm also trying to make the, through the wardrobe as much as I can.
What you're talking about kind of reminds me, because I'm 40, so like I grew up in the 80s, and so I was also a huge fantasy nerd in like the 80s growing up with like we had the kind of cel shaded cartoon of Lord of the Rings, and we had that original cartoon of The Hobbit. So like those were like my entry points kind of into the more cinematic realm of like fantasy, because like I grew up reading a lot of fantasy books. My mom loved fantasy, so I got a lot of hand-me-downs from her. And so like that I can't imagine. It's so exciting to think about the fact that you got to see Lord of the Rings, the new one, when you were so young. I always wonder what that would have been like. So that's kind of cool.
I also saw it when I was young. I'm
youngins.
I'm 27, and every year when it came out, I would go to see it in the theater multiple times, and like every single one. But the first one, I had a similar experience where I was like, I want to go to there. Like I would to live in this universe. So it was a magical experience.
Yeah. And I mean, also my relationship with like horror movies is sort of late. In that they just terrified me when I was a kid. Okay. And I kind of avoided them. Aside from my aunt, who forced horror movies upon my mom, I would go over. Yeah, like literally, she took my mom to see Night of the Living Dead at a drive-in, and my mom like talks about it as though it's like a current movie, that she's like, oh, that movie. I can't think about that movie. Like, scarred her.
Oh my gosh, scarred her for life.
Yeah, literally. I used to go over to her house. And my aunt would like have video games and ice cream and hot dogs and would just like watch movies all day with me. It was like the greatest thing. And I was like 13. She was like, "What do you know about the Halloween movies?" I'm like, "Nothing." She's like, "Let's go."
Oh my God.
So it started as like me being like, I don't know. Like I was terrified, but I was like, she almost was like making me watch it. And now it's, I just can't. I love horror movies. I like any horror movie I can find. I'd almost rather. It's embarrassing how much I prefer watching horror movies to, I don't know, whatever the other very like, the Criterion Collection that I should be watching. I'm like, what's this new scary movie? So I love horror.
So did you get into horror like watching Halloween with your aunt? Is like that kind of when you started, or did that scare the shit out of you?
I think so. It did. Okay. I mean, it was interesting, and like my brain at the time, I was like very interested by the idea that like this thing just scared the hell out of me. And then I think I kind of danced around it for a while, but I don't know, like I guess something did happen at a certain point where I was like, I want all the horror movies I can find. But I do remember watching like The Ring, and that just, that still is like one of my favorite horror movies ever. One of my favorite movies.
It's really good.
And Candyman, which I remember thinking Candyman was made by like a consciously evil presence. I was like deeply upset by that movie. But The Sixth Sense is like literally instantly when you guys were like, "Do you have a movie?" I was like, "The Sixth Sense." Did I totally?
Oh no!
Okay.
It's in the title of the podcast. So
I don't know if we were doing like a drum roll or something. But, yeah.
So was The Sixth Sense your first horror movie, or what? Do you remember what your first horror movie was?
I don't remember what my first horror movie. I mean, It may very well have been Halloween. I was trying to sort of figure out today, and it could have been easy. I could have Googled it in 5 seconds. But I was like, how old was I when I saw The Sixth Sense? And it keeps coming in and out of my head today, and I haven't quite figured that answer out. But
it came out in 99.
99. Okay, so that makes sense. So that's actually crazy. I'm younger than I thought I was, and whatever this memory is. I don't know. I think I kind of imagined it was actually later than that. That's interesting. But then it may be very well like that might be kind of the beginning of it. Yeah.
So as an adult, what do you think kind of draws you to genre films or horror in particular?
Well, I mean, how do I describe it? I'm like like a self-styled vampire sometimes, so that's one way to describe it. I'm from Baltimore. And I grew up,
what? You're from Baltimore?
I am from Baltimore.
No shit. I'm from Baltimore.
Yeah.
I live in Maryland
really?
right now. Born and raised.
Where in Maryland are you?
I'm from Annapolis.
Amazing.
But I live in Silver Spring right now.
This is incredible. I grew up in Towson, so I'm from Towson.
No shit.
Yeah. I dropped out of Towson College, by the way.
Ooh.
I went to Towson College.
Wait, that's so cool. I was born in Baltimore. I spent a lot of time in Baltimore. Oh, weird and cool.
Well, this is actually this is a more interesting version of this, which is that, as you know, like my, elementary school experience growing up in Maryland is like, you read Edgar Allan Poe. For me, it was. I remember they took us like on a field trip to see like a company of actors doing like a medley of Edgar Allan Poe stories, and they did The Telltale Heart. And I remember just like sort of being a kid and looking around and being like, guys, like this is inappropriate. You know what I mean? like I'm like deeply uncomfortable, and you guys are like probably responsible for this. Like I remember like having a real feeling of looking at the adults being like, this has gone too far.
What is wrong with you?
Yeah, like I was like, this is absurd. Like this must be stopped. I'm not going to sleep. So, yeah. So I mean, that's part of it. I just love all of that stuff. I mean, it's like Edgar Allan Poe, and I would prefer to live in like a Victorian Gothic novel. So it's like a pretty easy extension for me to.
Hell yeah. So do you ever still feel that childhood fear when you're watching horror? I know for a lot of people like us who watch horror, it's hard to kind of chase that high, but do you still ever experience that?
Yeah, it is a feeling of like, I don't really like spicy food, but I have just heard from people who like spicy food that they're just now like chained to the idea of looking for that sweet kick, and it's
yeah.
So I imagine it's something like that, but I get little bits of it sometimes. I'm trying to remember the last thing that scared me. I mean, we watched Host, and obviously the scares in that are
perfectly executed,
and like deeply dark. You know what I mean? Like just sort of like hopeless, like a hopeless sort of feeling will really get me. What else? I don't know. I'm trying to think of things that have really scared me lately. I feel like there's something that I'm very clearly missing. I can't remember, but it's rarer than I would like. The things that really upset me are, I mean, I'm not like a big gore person, but the stuff that upsets me are things that's like, I don't know, they're almost like brain worms or something, like images or ideas that are just like, oh, that's like deeply strange, which is probably why The Sixth Sense is like stuck with me. There are like moments of that which I just are like, burnt into my mind. But I've watched The Wailing like 5 times in the past 2 years.
That is such a good movie.
It's so good.
Yeah. And I could talk about that movie for hours because I'm just absolutely in awe of it. But that movie has moments where you're like, that's like a perfect movie to me, on an entertainment level and like an execution level.
Yes, it's gorgeous.
It's so epic too.
It's just, and I'm going to try my best to not get on a wailing tangent here, but like, I just can't stop talking about the idea that this movie just switches halfway through.
Yeah.
Like it's like a broad, like physical comedy, and now I rewatch it to be like, when does it actually change? And it's like in the span of 30 seconds where like the whole movie is like literally takes a turn and it is like high tragedy at that point. And I'm just, I love melodrama, and I adore that movie.
That's one of the things I love about Korean horror cinema and Korean genre films in particular is that they can they don't stay in one genre or one subgenre, and so they can they're very playful, and they do turn on almost a moment's notice into something that's like absolutely terrifying. I had that feeling watching Parasite, where it's like mostly the beginning is sort of like a family drama, family comedy, and then there's a point where it just like flips and you're like, oh, I'm unprepared for this new direction.
Right. Yeah. It just is like, oh, it's just such an amazing, I wonder what that is. in I just don't know enough about it, but there must be some sort of cultural connection to how closely like comedy and horror is. And similarly, like I remember I read something years ago that I'm constantly thinking about of the difference between like, Japanese horror, for example, and American horror, which is like, if we close our eyes, we're like Ed Gein's in a house somewhere. And in Japan, it's like the ghosts are living on top of each other in the metropolis. It's like things like that are just so interesting to me, like cultural expressions of horror. I don't know, whatever that says about us.
Yeah. I think about that a lot when I watch Japanese horror. I watched The Suicide Club by Sion Sono the other day, and I was like, what in the hell is this movie? I haven't seen that. It's very weird, but it's pretty good. It's very, very wild. But anyway, I digress. So let's talk about The Wanting Mare.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Just to start out, so for our listeners who might not be familiar with the film, can you just give us tell our listeners a little bit about the movie?
Sure. Yeah. It's, see, this is so fun because I really have a real impulse to just completely lie and be like, it's about a bunch of people who steal cars and they drive them as fast as they can. But it's about cowboys because there's a wanting mare. They're chasing a horse. Yeah. It's like I could just sell whatever. At this point, the movie's done. So I could be like, it's about,
oh my God.
So a collection of high stakes bank robbers. But okay, so The Wanting Mare is a film that I have been actively making for the past 5 years.
I'm just imagining people like going into this movie now and thinking, "Where's the Rock? When's the Rock going to show up?"
Yeah. So you wait. I got some serious cameos in this thing. But
he crawls out of the ocean, like these beautiful ocean scenes, and he literally crawls up on the rocks and starts like doing his eyebrow thing. Anyways,
part of this joke is like it's funny to me because like the there is like some truth to it because it is a far stranger movie than like some of the like pop culture coverage that it's received. It's just in a sort of very specific visual container, but it is a bizarre, strange movie. And it is funny to me that like, people are on YouTube are like getting recommended it in between like watching like Cyberpunk 2077 videos. And they're like, and then let me talk about this like 90-minute strange, haunting, quiet drama where no one talks. So, that is like very funny to me. It also is funny to me because I am not, I don't like live on like Bergman's Island or something. I'm also watching the 27/7 videos. While like, also be like, I'm also making this very strange movie. So it is very funny to me.
Is that weird when you are watching YouTube and an ad for your movie comes up?
It is.
That's me. It's like the Leonardo DiCaprio pointing meme. You're like,
it's so crazy. It's really crazy. I saw the Apple TV listing for the first time last week. And I just was like, because I guess it's like live on Apple TV, which that's a nice little plug. It's live on Apple TV.
There you go.
But it was, the still in the trip. I don't know if you guys know this. I've tried to hide this. I think it's not very hard to hide, but I am also in the movie. I don't.
Yes.
Okay.
We actually talked about that before. We were like, wait, he is. Oh, that's him.
Yeah, I've tried very hard to actively act as though that's not me for a bunch of reasons, but it's getting harder to maintain. So this morning I took something and I could tell like the first 15 seconds they were like, wait a second. I was like, yes, I have hid this piece of information from you, but
well, you've also hidden it or someone has on IMDb where it says that you're an actor in it, but it doesn't say who you're playing.
I had to add it. Oh, really? Yeah, I had to add it last week, but it wasn't on there until last week.
Okay.
So,
yeah, it doesn't say who you're playing, but it does say you're in it.
Yeah, it's anyone's guess, really. But anyway, there was the Apple TV listing had like a random still from the trailer. And of course, the random still from the trailer was like me just standing there. And then I like paused for a second and like went and let my dog out and walked back in. And I guess it turned like one of the stills into like a full size, screensaver or something. Because I was on the listing and walked in and I was like, this is just so bizarre. This is truly so bizarre. But anyway, so I still have avoided this. The Wanting Mare is a movie Here we go. That I've been working on actively for about 5 years and inactively for about 10 years. And it is about, it takes place in a fictional world called Mare, which is my world that all my stories happen in my head. And it takes place in a small city called Withrin in that world. And it follows basically a nightmare that these women are passing and inheriting from mothers to daughters, and sort of this generational consequence of that nightmare, and also the relationships that they have because of it and in spite of it. And so it's a strange revolving thing of these women and dreams and horses, or a horse, really. I wish it was horses, but we were able to get one horse in. And yeah, so it's I used to tell people way before we made the movie, I was like, it's like if Wuthering Heights and Casablanca could happen together.
Oh wow, that's actually a very apt.
Yeah. It takes away some of the funny. Like, oh, it's Wuthering Heights and Casablanca. Okay, I get it now.
I've been describing this movie as the movie that takes place outside of like a fantasy epic. It's like the NPCs in a fantasy video game.
That's so funny that you said. That's our joke this past week, because the trailer was on IGN, so on YouTube, and so we keep being like, the reviews are now going to be like, very underdeveloped NPCs are like.
Oh no, that is not what I meant though. I was this is the movie that I've always wanted, that tells the story of the people in the fantasy world, not just the heroes going off on an epic journey, but lets you really sit in the fantasy world and follow these quieter stories and really get to know the lifestyles of people who live here and experience the world as just people.
That's the hope. The hope was both consciously aware that like we were going to make a movie with very little resource, and also the hope was to get other people interested in the movie. So there's that happening, and then at the same time there's also whatever my actual creative instinct is, which when you make something for like a very long period of time, for me it becomes very hard to, especially if it's the first thing. Now looking at it, I can see that it was impossible to make any choice that wasn't like the center emotional core of like my existence, like all of the like, oh, it would be fun to do this, or it would be fun to do that. Like those are the things that try to happen in 10 years. But then if you keep rewriting the script and you keep trying to shoot scenes and everything, like the only stuff that really stays are like just a couple few things that are like just really, really imbued with this meaning. And I think that's kind of how the movie happened, but also my interest in it as a, obsessive genre fan. I also was trying to remove what I felt like were all of the signposts of like here's your new fantasy world. Like, let me tell you the rules. Here's how this works, and here's how that works, and all of that stuff. I described it this morning when I was talking about, I listen to music all day, and I will actively listen to music that sort of allows me to like be in a flow and be like, I don't necessarily know where I am in reference to the rest of the music. And in some way, I wanted the movie to do that. I wanted to remove all of the stuff expositionally or, introduction wise that would make you say, oh, this is set up. So like, you guys have seen the movie, and I don't think this is a spoiler, but like you could probably in the course of like a day figure out a way to make that movie like on steroids for your first viewing, in terms of like really just like, oh, I'm going to give this piece of information, I'm going to give that, and then we're going to have this big reveal, and the waterworks are going to happen. And that's the sort of stuff that I really kind of just didn't want to do, because I wanted people to be able to enter into it, drop in kind of wherever you wanted, and follow it back around to that point. And that, I think that's the Wuthering Heights thing, because that, my hope was if you did enough of that, you could achieve something that very actually, in a like natural sense, had like a real sense of mystery and aliveness, and it just wouldn't get old.
Well, it's one of the things that I really liked about this movie is that it does feel, kind of merging what both of you were saying, it does feel like we're given a story in this world, and it's the impetus is not to explain how this world works, how everything is going together, how this city, Vice, the city that's covered in like snow, operates. It's to tell a story that happens to be set in this fantastic world, and there might be other stories set in this world. Yeah. And for someone that grew up reading a lot of fantasy novels, I love that approach, and that's what really like immediately pulled me into this story.
Yeah. Well, that's wonderful to hear. I think it also is like, if there is, I don't think this is a spoiler, but if there is like a dramatic conflict to the movie, if someone were to like come up with a list of being like, what am I moved by? Like, what am I trying to get resolved? For me as a viewer, like I would have very high on the top of the list. It would be like a rhetorical question of if magic existed once, and if there was like a time of magic and myth and all these things were happening, if we can actually say that happened, how does that affect my life here now with you? And I think the movie generationally is following people's relationship to that question at different points in their life. If I'm younger, I really have no need of changing all the rules of aging and dying and all these things that in a fantasy world are taken for granted. I'm always saying, like, if you have a world where there are dragons, you presumably also have a world where someone could figure out a way to maybe die 20 minutes later than they would have otherwise. What happens in those 20 minutes? And that's like the stuff that moves me about the movie. I think the movie really is about a bunch of people thinking about this question.
Yeah.
So I like questions. I get very terrified of answers. So I like when people are running around asking questions.
Do you plan on creating more stories in this world?
I do, yeah. I have zero desire to do anything else.
Hell yeah.
I currently the stuff that I would like to make next is pretty different from this.
Okay.
I think it would be hard. It'd be impossible for me to replicate the experience of The Wanting Mare, and also for me to pull apart the experience and the product and this strange thing that we're all very, very proud of, but is, its own thing. At some point, whatever I think about it, it has many people and many versions of myself and many years in it. It's its own thing. However, moving forward, I like, I'm really, really interested in creating the consequential secondary world, to use someone else's phrase. And that requires a very large amount of story and a very long time. So currently that's the goal. I have about 1,000 pages on my desk here next to the computer that I'm hoping to get going on. So the next one is... we'll see. Hopefully there's something that I'll be able to somehow announce soon. But there's a version of something else happening next, which I can tell you guys later. But it would be longer, and it would let me do a whole lot of stuff. And I have 2 sort of full stories that are revolving around places in the world, not Withrin or anything related to that city again. But, there are cultures and politics and commerce and trade and all this sort of stuff. So the thing that it would be next is a war story, I think, if it has a genre. And it's a couple different generations and trauma and a fair amount of horror, actually, and a lot of rain and stuff. So we'll see. Hopefully,
a lot of rain. I love it.
A lot of rain. Yeah, it's gonna be.
So why don't we have this movie like right now? I want to.
Yeah, that sounds appropriate for this time period.
I keep being like, man, how am I going to talk someone into me like, hey, you want to come shoot this movie for a year, and you're just never going to leave this rain machine? I'm like, is there a version of these scripts I could send out that are like, it's actually pretty sunny out. Like it's looking pretty good wherever this is. And then they get there and I'm like, oh, actually, we're going to add some rain for the next 8 months of your life. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I mean, the different locations and starting to kind of actually build up a world that has history and different ages and all that sort of stuff is also a fun way for me to be able to do the genres. You know, like The Wanting Mare is sort of hard to put a genre on because it's like my, you know, like my deep inner soul or whatever. I don't know, but it's fun now to be like, oh, it's a war story. This is like a great adventure. This is a hard, you know. So all of that is hopefully going to happen in this place if I am lucky enough to get to make more stuff.
So the other thing I wanted to focus on is the fact that you are a writer, a director, you're acting in this, you're an editor, you also do the visual effects.
Yeah.
What can't you do?
Math and music are the two answers. No, I mean, you know, making movies for no money is
right. You
for
kind of
very
have
little
to.
money. You have to, and it's also misleading because all the other people that work on the movie have done like 12.5 things.
Right.
So you interview like 1 of 5 of those people, and that one person becomes like this amazing genius that can do all these things. But it's actually like 5 people who are doing all the things together. So I am intensely lucky that I had a group of people for years and years and years and years being like, yes, this has worth, and yes, we have no idea what this looks like. And yes, your idea sounds totally nuts. You know, like imagine trying to explain that movie to people when I had no movie, and like it would be insane. They'd be like, what is it? You're making a Star Wars movie, but then it's gonna be a drama, and then I'm just gonna stand in front of this green screen like breathing. Like what are we doing here? So you know, it's a weird road that I'm very lucky to have people with.
So you brought up the green screen, and that's something that I have questions about because
Sure.
I'll be honest, I'm not typically a fan of like green screen and like the big blockbuster movies that I've seen because I don't see depth. It doesn't feel like I see much depth in what is being created on screen. Yet I watched this, and there are sequences where like I was messaging. I watched it again this morning in prep, and I was messaging Mary Beth, and I was like, okay, so is this filmed outside or where was this filmed? Like, I, as a visual effects person, how did you manage to create so much depth in your visual effects?
Through a lot of trial and error is the short answer. The long answer is, you know, I had a version of a movie that I wanted to make that seemed like it would wind up being The Wanting Mare, even though it was very different. Like 10 years ago, and had not like a lifeline in the world. So my theory was that if I could just basically work for free for anyone that had work to do, I could know somebody that makes movies, you know, and like keep the ball in the air as long as I can. And that's basically what I did. And of course, all of those pockets where everyone's like, we're making movies for no money, and we got nobody over here in this room, is always the visual effects room, you know? So, and I was very aware that I wanted to be, you know, involved with visual effects. I loved visual effects. I, you know, watched a billion hours of The Lord of the Rings behind the scenes. And obviously the stuff I wanted to make, like there was no version of them being made without a ton of visual effects. So basically at a certain point, it was like, that was the work that there was to do, is to like sort of sit there on these movies and, you know, living in people's living rooms and in my car and garages and, you know, just sort of having like a circus life for a better part of a decade, and trying to spend, you know, if you remove the idea of like accountability or money or like paying for food, and you're like, what can I really live on for 6 years? Then you could just watch YouTube videos all day and try to figure out how to run After Effects. And so that was the plan.
That's my life. I work in After Effects, and that's me every day Googling After Effects tutorials and trying to figure out what the fuck I'm doing.
Let me know how I can help. We're After Effects buddies, because the movie was entirely make composite in After Effects.
I cannot do even a fraction of what you do. I'm very like basic text graphics, not
cool.
like
Well,
building beautiful worlds.
Yeah,
I wish.
I mean, I've been, if you guys know anybody at Adobe, I'm like, just let me tell you guys what I do with this program, because I'm pretty sure it's not built for this.
Hey, I don't know what happened here, but I made a whole ass movie like in your program. So
I like imagine Adobe is like seeing me being like, I did this in Adobe, and they're like, no, he really did it in Nuke, or he really did it in these other programs. And I'm like, no, I really
no.
did this in Adobe. But so I mean, I started to be like, it's time to make this movie. I think I know enough. I probably knew about like 20% of what was required, and we just started on it, and it just took so long to figure out really truly like what the stuff looks like, of what looks good, what doesn't look good. And another reason why I don't think I'm really ever going to be able to make a movie like this again is that visually, like the goal was to have a movie that was like cohesive. I wanted to have a movie that just felt complete. Like I'm very obsessive about that, as you might be able to guess visually, of being like, I don't want anything that looks, I want everything to be touched, Like I don't want a single scene of someone where you're like, oh, well, that's just a normal scene, and then now we're in, Oz.
Right.
I wanted the whole thing to just be, which is, that's how you quickly lose 5 years of your life. But yeah, I mean that was, it just took a very, very, very long time.
I also kind of wondered if any of this, because like I noticed when I was pulling up your IMDb page that you actually did matte paintings, I think, for Save Yourselves, which is a movie that kind of flew under the radar last year, but I really liked.
Yeah.
And so I was wondering if did you start out as kind of like a painter, or how?
All of that stuff, all of those credits, like I have seen a couple people be like, from a visual effects artist who did these movies, now he made a movie himself. Incredible. Like, like literally no one would have ever hired me to do anything. Which is actually how I got lucky, because nobody bothered me for 4.5 years of making the movie. And then at a point where I was like, oh, I think I got something that looks pretty good here, guys. That people were like, oh, do you want to do that over here? And I honestly was just trying to get anyone to pay attention to the movie. And that was being very challenging. But people were like, well, but you do know how to do all this stuff. Do you want to do this on this movie, or do you want to do that? And, for the first time I was like, oh, this is a job that I can take. And as I was finishing more of The Wanting Mare, I had a little bit more time. And the past year has been, a quickly escalating scale of those movies.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed going from Save Yourselves to The Green Knight. That's pretty awesome.
It's been sweat and bullets to be like, that's a whole other conversation. But the Green Knight was like an absolute dream come true. But it initially was like 2 shots, which then turned into like 6 months or something with David, and we got to make all this crazy stuff that I have not yet seen anywhere aside from my computer, and I'm just terrified. Because it's like all of the other people who did visual effects movies, like Weta and like huge, dream companies, and I'm like, I think I'm like, anyway, without getting too geeky about it, but I was like, they don't. Again, I was like, I'm making this in After Effects.
So are you like completely self-taught?
Well, yeah. I mean, YouTube self-taught. I didn't like. Well, yeah. I didn't like go to the library.
That's what I mean. Oh, 100%. I am also very much like self-taught editor, graphics, and it's like, oh yeah, did you go to school for it? I'm like, nope.
No, yeah.
Sat on the internet and just figured it out.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. I'm a child of YouTube.
Seriously,
sure.
though,
I love it, and but yeah. I mean, as you guys can probably tell, I'm very prone to rambling. So you might have asked me a question like an hour ago that I haven't answered.
I was just wondering if you got if part of the fact that you were a painter and you've done like matte paintings, if that kind of contributed to the way the green screen looks more lifelike.
It totally. I mean, those matte paint, like, so for example, in Save Yourself, the matte paint, like the first shot in the movie and then the last couple shots I did. And those are just Photoshop digital matte paintings. And that basically is the exact way in which I made the entire Wanting Mare. Like all of those elements. I don't know if this might be too technical, but like, you know, a lot of traditional movies that have, you know, if I were to be like, hey, I'm going to make a movie that's 75% on green screen, they'd be like, all of these sets need to be built digitally. Like 3D modelers need to model a chair in this living room or need to model this driveway. And then we're going to move a digital camera through it. We're going to light it. And, you know, that becomes like an exercise in simulations and modeling and texturing, all this sort of stuff that 3D software had no idea how to use, really. What I did know how to do was make digital matte paintings, which would be a combination of like photographs and, you know, all kinds of different stuff. Basically, just making whatever you could in Photoshop. So the whole movie is digital matte paintings to an absurd degree, to where like, which is now, because technology is like so rapidly expanding and developing. I would never even do this now, but like there are huge sections of the movie where like the grass is a digital matte painting of grass.
Wow.
Because I didn't have the ability to make 3D grass. So I was like, well, in After Effects, you can make a solid layer, a flat layer 3D, which you might know from motion graphics. And I was like, well, if I tilt this layer that I painted in Photoshop that looks like grass, then that's going to be my grass layer. So like, that's literally, the movie is made that way, which if it is cohesive, that's what I was saying, is I'll probably never be able to do this again, because the movie's cohesiveness is really that, you know, 3 people sat in a room for 5 years and made the whole movie. There's no like distribution of labor of someone being like, well, I light 3D scenes and I shot it on the day. Like the people who are like cutting my hair out are like the people who are lighting the scene when we shot it. Zach Schaefer and David Ross and Jared Condes. And so it's just us in a room. And if you do that long enough, all of the answers become the same if they're like instinctual answers. So like every time I close my eyes and be like, the brightness and contrast setting on the sky here, do I like it at 10 or 12?
Oh, you know? God, I feel that.
And, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And when that question is replicated that many times on that scale, the movie sort of looks kind of like its own thing. I think, you know, regardless of whether it looks good or not, but I do think it looks like its own thing, and that's really the reason why. So now I have to be able to be like, how do I replicate this and actually not do a lot of it? But you know what I mean? So
Adobe sponsor Nicholas, please.
yeah.
Adobe, he's a brand ambassador.
So, yeah. So.
Okay, so we've talked about Wanting Mare. So Nicholas, what movie are we talking about today? That's
We're
Guardian
talking
for
about
Life.
the Sixth Sense.
Okay.
Which I've spoiled.
So if you live under a rock and have never seen The Sixth Sense, here is a quick synopsis. Young Cole, played by an adorable / haunting Haley Joel Osment, can see dead people. And he is frightened by the visitations from those with unresolved problems who appear from the shadows. He is too afraid to tell anyone about this special gift, except for child psychologist Dr. Malcolm Crowe, played by Bruce Willis. As Dr. Crowe tries to uncover the truth about Cole's abilities, the consequences for client and therapist are a jolt that awakens them both to something unexplainable.
Dun, dun, dun.
Amazing.
Thanks, IMDb.
Okay, Nicholas, tell us the first time you saw this, what happened, where were you? Tell us your horror story about The Sixth Sense.
So I got it all for you. Here's what happened. I used to be lucky enough to go to Blockbuster every Friday night, and I would pick out 2 movies. One movie would be watched Friday night, and the second movie would be watched Saturday morning at like 7 a.m., and then I would watch the first movie again. So
I like that. That's a good ritual. I like that a lot.
It was a special time in the world of blockbuster in my life. And so I have no memory of what the Friday night movie was that week, but the Saturday morning movie was The Sixth Sense.
Oh, geez.
I don't know why I picked this. And now understanding when the movie came out that I was like 10 years old, like there's a bunch of questions I have before, however, it is an experience of like fear that I like deeply had never experienced. And I have told this story to other people because, like the phrase, like basically like a shock, like a scared shock where you like are just in absolute shock and you like kind of can't move, like genuinely happened to me. And I remember being like, I can't move. I'm so scared. Like my like jaw is locked open. And it was, at the exact moment where the kid says, do you want to see where, I'm paraphrasing, but do you want to see like where my dad hides his gun?
Oh my
moment.
God. We were just talking about that before you came on.
And I have like goosebumps talking about it right now. And it so upset me. Like I was like, I couldn't move. I literally couldn't move. And I like it, like, I remember it like to this day and it still just like gets me. And I think I don't actually know if I finished the movie. Wow. I don't have a memory of I certainly did, but then, from that point, I became just enamored with M. Night Shyamalan on a bunch of levels. One of them is I think he was one of the first people that I was aware he was the guy making these movies. It's like he's a master at branding, which is also looking at like I don't know if there have been enough think pieces about like M. Night Shyamalan's. Both his, how do I describe it? How amazing of a person he must be to overcome in like the late 90s, being a guy named M. Night Shyamalan, getting famous, making movies where he basically has like control, in like, a world of like unexamined whiteness, like is incredible. And it also is very fascinating to now in retrospect think about some of like the backlash around him and how he navigated that. And these are things that obviously were not happening in my 10-year-old brain. Right. However, amazingly, and this is like what a great thing, none of that entered my brain at all. I was like, this is the guy who's making the stuff that's the best, and he's the best, and he's the real deal, and he's like mysterious and wonderful. And I just was enamored with him. And so I guess I can tell you this. The second part of the story is that I then am in my teens and I'm like, I want to make movies. I want to be involved in making movies. And I read a book, which I don't know if you guys have heard of this book. It's the most amazing book. I make everyone read this book. It's called The Man Who Heard Voices. Have you guys ever heard of this thing?
No, I haven't.
Okay, it's the best. Okay, so basically what happens is a guy follows M. Night Shyamalan through the entire process from writing till finishing Lady in the Water.
Oh, interesting.
And this thing is bananas. like, and Christopher Doyle, the infamous, amazing genius who is, one of the more eccentric individuals of all time, who shot, all Wong Kar-wai's movies, shot Lady in the Water. Like, there's like it's like, a fly on the wall account. And in my mind, never knowing anybody who made movies, I just devoured this book. And it is an amazing example of M. Night Shyamalan being, at least in the telling of the guy who wrote the book, like being possessed by the importance and the meaning of his movie and dealing with like people dealing with it and, being like, how do I continue? And I think there's like a version where someone like an adult or someone who makes movies could read that as like maybe not painting him in a great light. However, I read it and I was like, this guy this is the greatest. So anyway, long story short, I become aware that he's filming The Happening. And I don't know how I do this, but I Google enough of it where I somehow find like the casting office and I basically send him a headshot every day for like 6 months.
Oh my gosh.
And which is like, also to be clear, like my headshot at 14 is like me in like a, like a triple XL black turtleneck. with like a photo like developed at Rite Aid, that like my mom took. And I'm like genuinely, that's like what I was saying. I was like, damn, I'm out of headshots. I got to go back to Rite Aid, Mom. Like, we got to keep it. She'd be like, we got to print more of these and that's like literal. And so surely it's like some like, 25-year-old person was like, why does this child keep sending me photos of himself in his turtleneck? Like this must be stopped. And surely because of that, they decided to put an end to it, and we're just going to call him. So somebody called me one day and we're like, I swear to God, they were like, are you the person in the headshot? And I was like, I didn't really know what they were talking about. And I was like, yes, I am. They were like, okay. And it wasn't even like I now try to run this through my mind of who knows somewhat about movie sets, and I'm trying to be like, what was happening on this day to have this call with like a 14-year-old where somebody called and was like, do you want to come be in the movie? Like, we're doing some stuff in the movie. You could come be in it. And I was like, I'm there. So my dad, bless him, was like, we're going. Like, Nick's got a big part in the happening. He's starring with Mark Wahlberg. It's all going to happen. So we go and stay in Philadelphia because he makes all those movies in Philadelphia. And they basically have me and my dad in like the extras holding room in a school gymnasium for like 5 days in the middle of the summer. I'm sitting in the school gymnasium like with like my earmarked copy of The Man Who Heard Voices being like somewhere M. Night Shyamalan is on this set. And they kept like coming in like a lottery and like pulling people, and then I wouldn't get picked. And then finally I was like, I don't think it's going to happen. And finally like a second AD comes in and is like, and like can probably see I'm like near tears. And he's like, what are you, have you been picked for a scene? I was like, no, I haven't. and he basically was like, all right, you're going to be in this thing. So they take me, like American Idol or something. I'm like waving to my dad and he's like, go get him. And I'm like, here I go. And they like take me to the set, and man, this is just so awesome. I'm like in a little classroom and I'm looking around, and now knowing what was happening is like the ADs were blocking it, and like the gaffer was like setting up and everything. And they just were like, get these fucking kids in there and just have them shut up. And just like, we're going to film and they're not even going to know. Like, it's going to be fine. So that's what happens. And I swear to God, this is like not an exaggeration. I don't know how he did it. It's like a magic trick. I'm in this classroom and I swear to God, I turn around and like sitting on a desk behind me is M. Night Shyamalan.
And you're like,
I was like stunned, and he was like folding his hands and just staring at me. And I was like, and I swear to God, he like could tell that I was like the man himself, and he like kind of nodded at me like, that's right. Like, here we are. Anyway, we did a couple scenes, and it was like John like was on with Mark Wahlberg, and they did all the scenes and all this sort of stuff. And then we did another one later in the day where everyone's like leaving the school. And then the craziest part of the story is, to me, I'm like, they let my dad, I guess, come on set through like a second AD to be like, come get your fucking kid. Yeah. And my dad, just, sweet, unassuming dad, is like, well, are you going to say bye to M. Night Shyamalan? And like, of course, like, we're here. What are you going to not say bye to him? He invited you.
Besties, right?
M. Night himself invited you. And I was like, Dad, like, I can't say bye to M. Night Shyamalan. He's like, yeah, you can. Go say bye to M. Night Shyamalan. And I was like, I don't know about this. But anyway, so I have no idea what the set is, or who's doing what. But now I know that M. Night Shyamalan was in the middle of Video Village, like surrounded by a bunch of ADs and PAs, and he's talking to Tak Fujimoto, who's the cinematographer of like Gladiator or something.
Right.
And like he's like fighting with like a producer, like a line producer, who's like, you can't film anymore today, we've lost light. And I like wander my little self in there, and I do remember at the time where I was like, I probably should not have done this. Like, this is not allowed. And a bunch of people just stop and look at me, and you could tell that they're about to be like, like hit this kid over the head or something, like he's gone too far. And truly in this moment, like I just look at M. Night Shyamalan, and M. Night Shyamalan looks at me. I'm using his full name forever. I don't even care if I meet him. He's M. Night Shyamalan. But, and he like looks at me and clearly gets everyone to not do anything about me being very off the beaten path, and he like walks up to me and he's like, hello. And like, this is like chaos. There's like hundreds of people on the set. And I was like, hello, Mr. M. Night Shyamalan. I would like to thank you for having me.
Oh my God.
And I was like, and I was holding the book of The Man Who Heard Voices. And I was like, I want to make movies one day, and it's because of you. And thank you so much for having me. And I swear it makes me like really emotional, actually. And he stops, and like clearly someone is about to get yelled at. Like the second AD is like, oh my God, I lost one of these kids, and now he's like bugging him. Like, can you imagine being like a second AD and your job is to take these kids off set,
wrangle these kids, and
one of these little rascals like runs into Video Village and is like, M. Night Shyamalan, Anyway, so M. Night Shyamalan stops and he's like, it's just been so wonderful having you. And he gives me a hug. And he was like, best of luck. Thank you so much for coming. And I was like, thanks, M. Night Shyamalan, and went home, and it was the greatest thing ever.
I'm gonna get emotional.
I'm getting emotional.
So sweet.
It's the greatest. What a guy. And I swear to God, like there were scenes in my movie that we were filming. This is a whole other story, but like I just constantly kept swinging and missing at recreating a dance club. And every time I was like, man, I'm going to get 30 people in here today. 56, 60 people are going to come. It's going to be bananas. Like 12 people would come, and then I'd be like, oh God. But also these are like 12 human beings who have like driven, like an hour to be like, I'm going to stand in this warehouse and like listen to you play one song on repeat for hours. And I remember being like, when that happened, and this is very real, when that happened. And one of those days that we were filming that, I just was like near having a meltdown. And like, somebody came up to me. He was somebody I know. I met, a couple times, and they were nice enough to come. And they were like, I just want to thank you. And I was like, whoa, this is like really wonderful. And because of that thing, I was like, oh, this is like, clearly that dude was under so much stress. And he was like, I have time enough to hug this 14-year-old kid. So, I don't know. It was a very early good lesson in how to run a set through hopefully being kind.
Wow.
So, yeah. Anyway, that's my whole long M. Night Shyamalan story. But
that's amazing. That is amazing, though.
That's amazing. Oh,
yeah.
We stand M. Night Shyamalan.
We stand M. Night Shyamalan.
We do, but I'm going to take this in another direction now. And say how much this film ruined movies for me.
Okay. Okay.
So, God damn it, M. Night. No, I say that in jest, but like, honestly, so this movie came out in 99, so I was 18, and I saw it opening night back in the 90s where internet was pretty much non-existent, and I didn't watch a lot of TV. So like, all I knew about this movie is that this kid could see dead people, right? And that people seemed to like it. That was like literally my only tidbit going into this film. And so, yeah, the film scared me, obviously, but then we get to the end and I'm thinking, okay, Bruce Willis is going to save his marriage, live happily ever after. And then, of course, the twist happens, right? And I mean, I'm not saying that this is the first movie that invented the twist or, that used it. But for me, being an 18-year-old that had never really experienced a movie that had like such a twist in it before, outside of like, I was trying to think back, and yeah, I mean, you watch like Scream or some like slasher movies or some whodunit mysteries, and like a lot of times the reveal at the end, it's like, oh, I never thought it would have been this person. But like, this was the first time that I saw a movie that had like a twist that recontextualized the entire film. And it broke my mind. As an 18-year-old, I was at that point where it came out in August. So I was going into my senior year. I already knew that I was going to study English literature. I wanted to analyze. I had spent a lot of my life like reading text, reading books, and like analyzing it and everything. And this was the first time I realized that I could do that with a movie. And so it was the first time that like I started to realize that a movie could do something to you similar to what a book could. And because of that, and because I was such an impressionable 18-year-old at that time, every movie that came out that I would go to afterwards, I would immediately start to dissect it immediately. So I could not enjoy films the way a lot of people are able to turn off their brain. I would be sitting there analyzing it from the very opening shots. And if I could figure out that a movie had a twist and I could figure out, I was so disappointed by the end of it if I was right. And most of the time I was right because I was an English nerd and I like to study stuff. So I laugh about it, but like this movie really kind of came at the perfect time where I would start to, in my adult life, overanalyze movies. And I mean, yeah, I now review movies and that kind of stuff. So yay. But like, I can't turn my brain off when I go see movies, and I honestly blame this movie for that. So damn it, M. Night.
Well, isn't it like, I mean, wasn't like every movie for like years afterwards being like, just you fucking wait.
Oh yeah, how every movie after this was like, a twist you're never going to be able to believe, or like because this movie wasn't originally marketed as that. And it was until like after the first weekends and, then like the response came like, oh gosh, there's a huge twist in this. And then it became like part of the marketing stuff. But like going into it and not expecting there to be anything in it other than like, it's a ghost story. Right. You'd see movies from that and it became like such a trend to, we gotta one up M. Night and like be shocking because that's what made this movie, in marketing terms, what made this movie such a marketable movie is that a twist. Don't let anyone spoil the ending of this movie, right? Yeah. Go see it before someone else can spoil it.
Yeah.
I think I also knew the twist.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Which is also one of the things that I love the most about the movie. Which is like, I think it's like Robert McKee. One of these like screenwriting books is like it has like a special place in hell reserved for The Sixth Sense, because it's like, this is, for some reason, it's something about like the ending, it like invalidates the structure, the structure that the movie is otherwise set up. And I feel differently about that, which is that the scene of them in the car is the deeper twist is the movie's twist, which is that like people go into The Sixth Sense being like, I'm going to watch a horror movie that has a twist. And for me, the real fun twist is that like this horror movie becomes like this deeply, deeply human thing that's like about how we, become ghosts ourselves and lose one another. And even Bruce Willis's whole thing when he discovers that he's dead, it's not that he discovers like something necessarily deeply macabre. Like he discovers like his wife saying like, you left a long time ago. Like what a thing to be like. It gives me chills to even think about. Like, it's not enough to be like, you died in some, the last petal of the rose fell and now you're doomed to the, it's like it's a quiet marriage that fell apart in like a row home in Philadelphia. Like and it's like, what a wonderful, wonderful. I'm just so moved by. I feel this way about writers constantly. I'm normally, which English major, you probably. I become very moved by the mechanical choices that are made. Yeah. Because they normally are testaments to like what is of value to, the person as well as the characters. And I think like the value system of the person that wrote The Sixth Sense is just like so fascinating to me. And at the same time, like once you're in that world of like a highly emotional world, it just is like the stuff that he's able to get to is just so upsetting. Like the only part that eclipses the I know where to keep my dad's gun thing is him getting locked in that closet with that voice and like that angry. It's just like so. Oh my god! It's like it's just incredible. I just am in awe of the movie. Really.
Well, and it's incredible how, like you're saying, he balances these horrific moments that have like sat in my head forever, and these really deeply, like emotionally sad things. Like it's such a fascinating marriage of the two, and making you feel so many things and scaring you, but also making you like empathize with these characters, and it's really quite well done.
Well, I do sort of have another like hunch sometimes when I think about the movie, and this is also me devouring whatever the story of him and making that movie is that supposedly, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this. Did you guys ever read about like what he was doing before that, why he made the movie and how it came to be and all that sort of stuff?
No, I don't. I might have at one point when I was obsessed with this film, that I don't remember.
Yeah. Well, he was under contract with Harvey Weinstein. Long before Harvey Weinstein was Harvey Weinstein, and the contract was like some sort of like old Hollywood like 3-picture deal or something.
Right.
Where it's like, all right, NYU grad, like you're ours now. And he directed a movie that was like a Marley and Me or something. It's like a talking dog, I think, or something. Like it's something like that. I could be very wrong, but it's something in that world. And he basically was like, or so he says, he was like, my life is going to end if I don't do something. Like, no one's going to get me out of this contract. And he basically said to himself, the only way I get out of this contract is if I write the greatest screenplay of all time. Which is a screenplay, a very specific sort of screenplay must be written to basically make this this dream come true, which is one has to achieve like sitting down to read a script, and someone needs to close the script and say, this is the greatest screenplay I've ever read, which is a whole different game. And, you know, quite frankly, the answer to that has to be The Sixth Sense. And I think he had an agent who was smart enough to be like, we're going to tell people that they only have 2 hours to read this, and sort of like created this whole amazing smoke and mirrors of like at 7 a.m. on Monday, Disney, Fox, and like all these people are going to be delivered The Sixth Sense, and they have 2 hours to decide. And it worked. He had like a bidding war. He got to direct it, which is insane.
Wow.
And, you know, however, the fun of this is to me is like, what part of the movie was he like, I just gotta win the screenplay game? And what part of the movie was he like, this is the movie I want to make? Which there's a very real chance, which I guess is sort of how everyone makes movies, but there's a very real chance that he was like, I just want to make a movie about how we lose one another and, you know, our regrets and all this sort of stuff. And then he's like, Greg, but I got to get out of this contract. Okay, I'm going to make it a hard movie. And that, whatever that is, makes like a sort of masterpiece, you know? And I don't know. I'm a big fan of the whole thing, you know?
So Mary Beth, how old were you when you saw this movie?
Okay. I cannot remember how old I was.
Yeah.
But I remember seeing it when I was younger. And I remember watching it on TV, the censored version, because when the kid says, can I show you where my dad keeps his gun? When he turns around, his head is just a normal head. Oh. And there's the music. I was like, Mom. And she's like, this is what actually happened. And I was like, oh, because everything was censored on TV. I don't know why. I was like just randomly on, and my mom put it on.
Terrible.
I know it's terrible. But then
I would lose my mind. I would lose my mind.
And so I also saw this at an age where like I almost understood twist endings. So I was like confused because I was like, wait, is he dead? And like I had to have it explained to me because I was just like a little too young to like really grasp the twist. And I was like, oh. And then I watched it again when I was older. I was like, I get it now. And then there are so many scenes in this movie that have just sat in my head rent-free forever. But two of them are when Cole is in school. I think it's the school, and he looks up the stairs and there's people hanging from the
just
ceiling.
Hanging there. Yeah.
And then when they go to the funeral of the girl who like shows up in his tent, which is also fucking horrifying when she's throwing up on herself and like, anyway,
the way that scene is structured is so terrifying.
It's so terrifying.
That's the scene that even as an 18-year-old scared the living shit out of me because of the way that the camera like tilts up and you see the clothespins start to like pop off and the camera goes down and you're waiting for someone outside of the tent. But no, she is sitting there inches from his face and vomiting. It's
oh my God.
That scene.
It's horrifying.
But then the funeral, like you were saying, sorry, Mary Beth.
Funeral. Even what scared me even more is when her creepy little arm comes out from under the bed and grabs his ankle, and she just is like that creepy face under the bed. I was also scared of monsters under my bed for a very long time, like more than most kids probably were. So I think that's what got me. But just like her haunting eyes underneath the bed when she slides in the videotapes.
Wait, isn't that the girl from the OC?
Yes, it's a young Misha Barton.
Oh shit, it is, isn't it?
It is a young Misha Barton.
Oh my God, that's right.
Yep. But yeah, that's like what I vaguely remember about seeing it. I remember just being terrified of the imagery and like just shocked by all that. But I don't think it like it shocked me, but I don't remember it scaring me that badly. That's my vague recollection of seeing The Sixth Sense. And then I watched it again. I was telling Terry this. A bunch of my friends and I were having a good time drinking, and we were like, let's watch The Sixth Sense. And then we all laid on the floor, watched it, and cried.
Really?
So it was
I mean, Toni Collette is like
okay. Let's talk about Toni Collette and her character.
Yes,
Toni
because
Collette experience.
this is one of those things where watching this movie as a kid, or for me as an 18-year-old, and then watching this now as an adult is such a different experience because I have gravitated to different characters. And yes, let us talk about Lynn Sear, please.
I'm just astounded by it. I think it's by far my favorite performance of hers. It's one of my favorite performances ever.
Like, how do people keep, I guess not sleeping on Toni Collette, but it feels like it a little bit. Like, she has consistently delivered fucking amazing performances.
It's fascinating because I feel like she's like so good that she's like a pinch hitter for unplayable characters.
Right?
And then now people are like, oh, well, yeah, she's just going to go like to 11 every time. And it's like, yeah, but also nobody else can do that.
No one can do it like her.
Right. Which is what's fun to me about The Sixth Sense, because she's doing such, I mean, let alone if this person was like, she's like from Australia, right?
Yes.
Okay, so like, let's say she wasn't even from Australia. She does like she's doing layers of things. She's like, she's making a whole person from Philadelphia. She's doing the eyebrows. She's doing the hair. She's doing like the fingernails. She's doing, and there's like just such a sense of, here's my biggest, I watched the scene again this morning, the car scene. And I just couldn't get over her ability in the scene to convey how much she's listening to Haley Joel Osment. Like, she's like there's like a childlike, it's like Steven Spielberg directing kids, all the fun of all those movies are you're watching the kid experience them. And it's like, you just see this open, eyes bulging, or they're crying, or they're like opens your sort of heart. That's like how she is in that scene. She's so delicate and just listening to him and just can't believe what he's saying to her. And, man, I just think it's just so beautiful.
That scene is it's what left me a blubbering mess when I watched this again last night. And it's what made me realize that, like, as a kid, I never really thought this was a sad movie. I was just more drawn to the scariness and the idea that this kid could see ghosts. And watching this last night, like, I'm not saying that this movie is a queer movie, but that conversation in the car, like, I think it plays differently for queer kids, because you have Cole, who through the entire movie isn't wanting to tell his mom about that he's different, that he can see ghosts, that these ghosts are haunting him, that he's unlike everyone else that he goes to school with. And he doesn't want to tell her because he's afraid of hurting her, I think, in some ways, but afraid of, like, she's not going to believe me, or she's not going to accept me, or something like that. And so when you have that moment and you have, like, her reaction where she's like you said, she is listening and she's processing. And then there's that final acceptance of, like, look at me. And she uses that refrain that she's used through the movie. And it's just like, she accepts him for who he is, and it's like this self-actualization moment for him that I think it as an adult who has had the coming out issues throughout his entire life, it like really resonated for me in a way that I was so not expecting.
Wow, I've never even thought about that. Yeah, from that lens.
It just was a really powerful scene that I watched last night, and then just like, I'm just bawling as I'm like watching this movie. What a performance. But even before that, I love the sequence where, like, she finds the marks on Cole's back, and she, like, is trying to hold it together, and then she dials a number, and she's like, "Hi, this is Linsir. I'd like to talk to you about your boy and his friends keeping their goddamn hands off my son." Like,
yeah, she has such a living, boiling like protectiveness over him, which again, it's like when you think about what do you get from different characters? You could just as easily have written a mom character that was like couldn't give a shit, you know what I mean? And you could start the screenplay and be like, oh right, this is like going to give him even more of a thing. And in fact, he places the mom as someone who is like deeply protective, which is like sort of an opposite choice, but still makes it as though that even though in all her protectiveness, she's like, you know, she's that's the hardest person to convince, I guess.
yeah.
What a film.
What a film.
You know, and he also contrasts it with, I mean, you know, there's the mom that is poisoning her daughter.
Yeah.
And so you have like these two contrasting that like even strengthens her character. It's like a perfect, even though she's only in like one scene, it's like a perfect foil to the overprotectiveness and the protectiveness that Lynn has toward her son. It's such a subtle thing that I didn't even really think about until just now, but like it's there. And I think it's these little tiny moments of how M. Night has constructed this plot that really make this more than just a movie that has a twist or a movie about ghosts or a movie that is scary.
And that's why I also love The Village, but that's just me. I love The Village forever.
I skipped school to go watch The Village, I think, if I remember this correctly.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. It was pretty rock and roll.
And
I was like, yeah, this is a weird movie. I'm skipping school and I don't know what's going on with Joaquin Phoenix.
And I know people say like this is M. Night Shyamalan's like only good movie or his best movie. And I think it's his best movie.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's his only good movie.
No.
By any stretch of the imagination. And like while I'm not always a fan of some of the things he creates, you can't deny that this guy has balls. Like he is just like ready to do the weirdest shit and isn't afraid to. And I admire that quite a bit.
He also has such like a formalism. You know, there's like he has a real serious technical rigor that he's putting his movies through. And I haven't finished the first season of Servant, but I watched I think like 3/4 of it.
I love the fucking Servant.
Oh, really?
It's so fucking good.
Now I have to finish it.
Oh my god, it's so good.
I was like, oh, he's in a whole other thing now. He's like he's like playing. He's like, I feel like he's like, I don't know, his like camera rigor. I feel like he's like entertaining himself now, being like, how fascinating can I make this? Which is, I think it's like, I don't know, it's a very entertaining answer to like the wonderkind that he was, of being like, okay, now I'm gonna really deal with the grammar and the mechanics of this. And I don't know, I love pretty much everything he's made. He's always interesting, and I'll take that.
Always interesting.
He is always interesting.
Anything.
Yeah.
And he hugged me, so I don't care.
That's true. He did. He hugged you. That's such a sweet. Like he will now be my favorite because just
I know
of that story. That is like
He's also like very tall and very beautiful.
Is he really tall? I got short dude vibes from him.
I don't know. I mean, I think because I just was also a kid, so who knows? I could have been like, he's the tallest, most beautiful man I've ever met. But at the time, I really was like, he's very tall and not like dark and strange. He just was like incredibly charismatic, even just watching him like direct people. I remember being like, man, this guy's so amazing. But have you guys ever seen, this is the other thing I wanted to bring up. Do you guys remember, or have you ever seen the sci-fi documentary made about him?
No.
Do you guys know about, oh my god, okay, this is the best thing. So the Sci-Fi Channel made a documentary called The Buried Secret of M. Night Shyamalan. You guys have never heard of this?
No. It sounds like he's some kind of like, I don't even know.
This is like the zenith of like M. Night Shyamalan.
2004.
Being the strange, like Prince of Darkness. And the Sci-Fi Channel made a documentary called The Buried Secret of M. Night Shyamalan, which was a mockumentary that was marketed, at least to my, whatever 14-year-old brain, as a documentary. And it was like an investigative report on what the hell is up with this M. Night Shyamalan guy, and we're going to get to the bottom of it.
No way.
And they have like Johnny Depp in it, and like a bunch of people being like, yeah, there's something fucking real weird about that guy, M. Night Shyamalan. And it's like insane. And I swear to God, the fucking twist of this documentary is that the guy making the documentary discovers that M. Night Shyamalan is in fact dead. And they put this fucking thing on TV with like no disclaimer for my 14-year-old self. And I remember I was like so hyped about this thing because I still remember I saw like a commercial, and like literally was like watching the TV Guide channel every night, like watching it revolve back around and be like, when is the buried secret of M. Night Shyamalan going to come on? And finally when it came on, I was like, what the fuck am I watching? Like, are you telling me M. Night Shyamalan is dead? And there was like a period of after sitting there where I had to like, I think in a part of my brain was like I had to discover and also like naturally invent the mockumentary, where I was like, maybe this isn't real, but they marketed it like it was real because it's entertaining.
See, now I want to know.
He is in fact alive.
I want to know how many of these mockumentaries the Sci-Fi Channel has done, because we talked about when we had Dax on for Blair Witch that I saw the Sci-Fi Channel documentary Curse of the Blair Witch, and I thought it was a real thing.
Yes,
about the Blair Witch. And so now I'm curious, how many of these has
were they just blasting out on like the the video drum of like the Sci-Fi Channel in the 2000s? Yeah, it was like that. I remember being like, what the fuck am I watching? Like, this is like I'm getting a bad signal or something, and I'm catching the buried secret of M. Night Shyamalan.
As a found footage fan, I feel like I have to watch this now.
You gotta watch it. I think it's entertaining. I bet you it's so entertaining still. I think I pulled it up because I told somebody this years ago, and they were like, "You're making this up. There is no fucking documentary."
I'm seeing it on IMDb. 2 hours and 5 minutes.
Holy shit!
That's beefy.
Yeah, it is
like,
beefy.
Like Johnny Depp is like at the Chateau Marmont, like smoking club cigarettes, and he's being like, "There's like fucking, I don't know, guys, like." You're getting into some spooky shit. You might want to turn around.
Deepak Chopra is in this.
Deepak Chopra's in what?
Yeah.
Is M. Night Shyamalan in it?
Adrian Brody.
I think. See, I can't even remember. I think he's like. They're trying to like get an interview with him or something.
He is listed in the cast.
Okay. So I want to know about that. I want to be like, what the hell happened? Who pitched? Making a mockumentary about you that you were dead. How does this happen, M. Night Shyamalan?
I want to work for Sci-Fi. I just feel like all they do is come up with like the craziest ideas and be like, yeah, all right, let's just try it. Yeah. Like, why the fuck not?
I did have a question. So there is like a relic of the fact that this is made in the late 90s when they're at the play and Tommy turns around and he's like he's talking about he's starting up the play, and then the camera like transitions, and all of a sudden all of the audience members pull out these giant, beefy, bulky VHS camcorders to film. What? And the entire like cast of like they're all parents watching their kids play, right? And so like they're all filming this with these ginormous over-the-top camcorders, and I remember those from that era. And I was just curious because you guys would have been a little bit younger than me. Did your parents ever do that?
Well, for me, I'm the youngest, so I could have like fallen down a well, and they were they were like, presumably if my brother burped, they were like, we gotta get this on tape. And I dig through these old VHSs all the time whenever I go home. It's like my first order of business. I'm like, let me get these things out. And I'm just like waddling through the background. And they're like, oh, he's going to be all right. I also was just like a monster as a kid. So,
wait, how many siblings do you have?
I have two.
Okay.
Two older. Yeah. So they were like, yeah, he won't break himself. He's fine. Leave him alone. Which I tried my best, but yeah, they did. I mean, they did have a bunch of them. My dad had like the late 90s stash and just like a big VHS camcorder.
Hell
like,
yeah.
Let me get all this on tape. But.
I I'm the oldest of three siblings.
Tons of footage of you, I bet.
I was the one that got I was the one that everyone was scared was going to break herself and got all the video recordings. But I don't remember having a giant anyone having a giant camcorder. I remember having a smaller.
Yeah.
But I don't remember any of the big giant ones.
Oh, these are like, they're ready to like film in a movie. Like the size
the ones that are in the movie are like news, like going to film the news on their shoulders.
And it got me thinking, like, you won't see that anymore because everyone will do that on their phone. But like,
that's so funny you say that. Sorry, this is like a tangent. I used to work at a video archive, and they were showing me like all the different generations of like 8mm, Super 8, blah blah blah, and like how much shit they had to carry to film, and it was just that was how they did it. Like these news like reporters and experimental filmmakers and like kind of like guerrilla reporters would just carry on this giant equipment all day. I'm like, wow, it's bizarre how that has changed so much.
Yeah, I guess that's why they needed like literal vans. They're like, well, otherwise, what the hell are we gonna do? We gotta pack this entire van to record me like being like, it's breezy outside, Tom. It's like somebody's, now we're like watching the insurrection off of somebody's like Apple iWatch. And they're like, this is just live. I don't know, guys.
Oh my God.
Sorry, a little insurrection content for the day.
There you go.
Gotta keep it relevant, a little spicy.
Yeah.
Do we want to wrap up and give this movie a rating out of 5?
Sounds good.
All right, Terry, how many I See Dead Peoples out of 5 do you give The Sixth Sense?
I think I give it 4.5.
Okay.
I think this movie is really it's really fucking good. And what I love about it is the fact that you can watch it for the twist. You can like analyze it and take a look at rewatching it and seeing like how did they pull off this twist? How did they do it? Like you can watch it for that. You can watch it because it's scary. You can watch it because of the heartfelt drama that is actually unfolding. I think that kind of says something, that you can watch this movie knowing how it's going to end, knowing from the very beginning what's going to happen at the end, and yet still be moved by it. Makes it more than just a gimmick that a lot of critics try to not like writing critics, but like critics of M. Night Shyamalan like to try to throw it at his movies, that it's all about that twist when it's really not. And even if it is, what I really liked this time is how sad the opening scene of this movie made me feel watching this.
We skipped Donnie Wahlberg. I'm sorry, Donnie Wahlberg.
Where that whole scene, but even before that, when it's him and his wife and they're having a conversation, and she's pointing to this plaque, and she's like, see, all of everything that you've done, all the sacrifices you've made have been worth it, because now you have this plaque to memorialize all of your accomplishments. Yes, you've put things second, you put me second, you put all this stuff second, but look at your accomplishments. And we watch this knowing that in 2 minutes he's going to die. And so it kind of adds this whole like veneer to his character of this like almost nihilism of like, yeah, look at all of your success, but what was it for? Because you're no longer here, and everything that mattered, you were holding second best. And so that whole scene, just knowing going in this movie this time, knowing what was going to happen, because I think this is the second time I've seen this movie. I don't think I saw it after the theater.
Okay.
So
that's a fresh watch.
Yeah. So just watching this at that point, just like really, gosh, it really hit home how emotionally powerful this movie actually is. And so for that, I got to give it 4.5. I See Dead Peoples out of 5. What about you, Mary Beth?
What's the metric again? Sorry.
How many I See Dead Peoples out of 5?
Gotcha. Okay. I wanted to be clear on the stakes here. Continue.
I would also give it a 4.5 I See Dead Peoples. So I see Dead Peoples and then just I see as the half. It's my stupid joke for the day. Yay.
Mary Beth.
It's hard to put into words how this movie has affected me and how it's one of those movies that I'll think about randomly and still get chills, and how it's a movie that introduced me to M. Night Shyamalan and got me really interested in his filmmaking and that kind of filmmaking. And watching it as an adult a couple of years ago and watching it like for this podcast, it's just like so impressive. Like we've said, like it's able to scare. It's also able to make you cry. It's able to make you feel all of these amazing feelings in such a seamless way. And Haley Joel Osment is the creepiest, sweetest little boy that I've ever seen in my life. And his performance is so good, and he makes me so sad, and I just want to give him a hug.
Yeah. Me too.
Nicholas, you have the final word. How many I See Dead Peoples out of 5 do you give The Sixth Sense?
After the hug story, everybody knows this thing's getting 5 I See Dead Peoples from me.
I'm surprised it's only 5.
Fair. That makes sense. That makes sense.
Imagine? I told that story. I was like, yeah, but there's some flaws in here.
This movie sucks.
But here, okay, so my reasoning is separate from the tender moment we shared. But my reasoning is I think this movie is one of the best examples of something that captures the cultural zeitgeist in a way that is just you can't repeat. I think there's a very, very small collection of these movies. Star Wars certainly being one of them, and you know you could probably come up with maybe one a decade, and. You know, I've spent like an inordinate amount of time thinking about whatever the cultural zeitgeist is overall, and also at the moment, it must constantly, obviously, say something about us that everybody, you know, even more than what a great ending. There's something in that movie which everyone is, you know, there's a feeling on the tip of everyone's tongue the year it comes out, and this movie happens to say it perfectly. And when that happens, everybody basically is like, this is the movie. This is the movie. And when that happens, I think it is a cause for like the efficacy of film and art that we've all found something that can express this idea, whatever it may be at that period of time about us and about everything else. And it manages to do it. So I don't have, when I see it now or think about it now, I'm thinking about both of those things at once, which is, you know, a time capsule, and something that just kind of caught everyone's mind, and I'm moved by it. And if that is a thing, you know, if you watch that movie back in that context and you think about, you know, it's a movie about people losing one another and dying and refusing to go, and we, you know, don't have enough time. All these very, 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 very human things that keep you up in the middle of the night. If that's what everybody wanted to talk about the year that movie came out, this says very good things about us, I think, surprisingly. So for its uniqueness, there will never be another like it. And I love the movie. So I think it's 5 I See Dead Peoples from me.
There you go.
Cool.
Or in the words of Dr. Crow to Cole after the play, it was better than Cats. That line killed, especially in 2021 post the Cats movie.
See?
Well, thank you so much, Nicholas, for joining us to talk about The Sixth Sense. Where can our listeners find you, and what do you have coming up you'd like to plug and share?
Well, it was a pleasure. First off, what a wonderful, wonderful time this has been. And people can find me hiding behind the anonymous avatar of my movie on social media, which is at The Wanting Mare on all of the social things. And the film comes out February 5th, and we're also releasing a behind the scenes documentary on February 5th. Which shows a little bit about how we made it, and you know, one of the other aspects that I briefly wanted to say, in a way, I don't know. I mean, I'm sort of spilling some of my cards here. We finished the movie November 3rd, I think, and Cassandra Baker passed away in the end of November.
Oh my God!
And, so it has been a constant process of figuring out, whatever all the things required to figure out when you lose somebody. And it's also very hard to talk about, which is something I keep now talking about because, the act of publicity and talking about movies is
Right.
a business.
Right.
Yeah.
Tickets to a movie, which I very desperately want people to see, because Cassandra spent the better part of a decade working on, and she certainly wanted everyone to see it as well. So I'm figuring out also, you have to talk about her because she is the movie and she is, the person that made it. And so I, love her deeply and miss her. And we're all dealing with this like bittersweet thing of this incredible artist and friend. But I resisted rewatching the movie this weekend because I don't know. Again, this is, I guess, what I was saying in my 5 out of 5, which is that there's something in this of a bunch of people being like, hey, I'm not ready to go. And, what becomes of our lives and all these wonderful things that hopefully bind us together. And the thing I keep saying is we have very, very little time and life is precious. And so I love this movie for that reason. And thanks for letting me get to talk about these things. And I'm trying to find ways to talk about Cassandra as much as possible.
Of course.
In reference to the movie as well. So,
Wow.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I know it's weird. It's like weird to say sorry, but that's fucking awful.
Yes,
and I'm glad we can talk about her and at least
that's been tough. Yeah.
pay tribute to her.
Yeah. Well, we're lucky, I think, that we're able to make things that have our lives in them. So I have, I'm a big believer of it's impossible to know what goes into something that you make. I could sit here and be like, I love The Sixth Sense because I have had terrible nightmares my whole life, and I made a movie about it. And, The Sixth Sense means that to me in very many ways, which it does. And I can sort of give you the psychoanalysis of these things add up to this. But I don't necessarily believe in that. I don't know where these things come from, and I don't know how much of ourselves get imparted in them. It's a deeply mystical process. So I don't know. I'm very lucky to have something that has that long relationship and bond and collaboration in it. So I'm in that sense like very excited for people to see the movie. Cassandra was also a painter. And has the whole body of work that at some point we're hoping to be able to put together and put out and show as well, and to be able to celebrate it. So yeah, I'm working my way through talking about this stuff. So forgive the rambling, but yes. So
No worries. Well, everyone, then please, for Cassandra, for Nicholas,
yes.
watch this movie. This is like a very weird transition. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's all right.
I don't want to seem insensitive.
Transition away.
Listeners, you've heard from us, but we want to hear from you. What was your experience with The Sixth Sense? Please send us an email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com, or you can reach out to us directly on Twitter. I am at MB McAndrews.
And I'm McGailey Dreadful.
And of course, please don't forget to follow the podcast on Twitter at Scarred Podcast. Thank you to Eric Power for our artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for our music. Thank you everyone out there for listening. Stay safe out there, but most importantly, stay creepy.
And until next time.
Won't somebody please think of the children? Won't somebody please think of the children? Somebody please think of the children.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room?
It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together, we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th.
We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.